It's funny when you said ego just now. I told you I'm very visual. The image I got were glasses that were actually a mirror that just looked back at my own eyes. You know,
What a metaphor.
ego, ego can be blinding. Honestly, you don't realize what you're doing.
Welcome to the Environmental Leadership Chronicles, a podcast brought to you by the California Association of Environmental Professionals. In this episode, we're joined by Armando Quintero, Director of California State Parks. Armando spent more than 2 decades with the National Park Service, serving as a park ranger at Sequoia, Point Reyes, and the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. He later served the Sierra Nevada Research Institute at UC Merced, served on the California Water Commission, including as its chair, and was elected to the Marin Municipal Water District Board. And in 2020, Governor Newsom appointed him Director of California State Parks, one of the largest state park systems in the nation with over 280 parks spanning 1.6 million acres. Armando joins us to talk about environmental leadership, equity, and access in the outdoors, and what it takes to protect California's most treasured landscapes. I'm Jessa.
Hi, I'm Corinne.
And today
I'm Armando. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it, please.
Hey there, I'm Armando Quintero.
Yes, and Armando is the Director of California State Parks. So thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to learn more about you today. All right, the first question we're going to jump into is, how are you connected to AEP?
February 11th is when you sent an email to our communications teams at Parks. And Kevin sent me a note and said, hey, this looks like a pretty good thing. You want to do this? And I said, yes. And we were off and running.
I love that. And thank you, Kevin. Thanks for not getting me caught up in the filter. I appreciate he looked into it before he rejected me. And so, Armando, I actually didn't have a chance to share this with you before, but I learned about you through someone who actually does some videography for California State Parks, and he mentioned your name. And I said, oh, I'm going to reach out to him. And I told him you were joining us as a guest. And he told me the story that he learned about you from drawing birds and wildlife from a young age. And so tell us more about that and those early connections and how that, like the connection to the natural world, shaped the career path for you. There's probably a lot to unpack in there, but.
Yeah, well, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I'm in a traditional Mexican family. When I was little, I grew up speaking Spanish. We didn't really go to parks, as we think of parks now, national or state parks. I was in the little local parks and the fields near where I lived. But I always loved to draw. And the thing that I was drawn to were birds. And we didn't have many books in our house. We had a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas and Reader's Digest. And that was it. And my first language was Spanish. And I drew on whatever I could find. In fact, there is, when my mom passed away, when we were going through her things, it was 2010, I found she had saved one of the first things that I had drawn and written in a little kid handwriting. And it was a picture of a bone, and it was on a piece of cereal box where it isn't. And there's a drawing of a bone, and it says, once upon a time, there was a bone that wished it was in a little boy. And then you flip it and it says, and it was. First story. And but
creative.
I love to draw birds. And in the Encyclopedia Britannica, there's a whole section of photographs of birds, and they were taken in a museum, birds that were in glass cases. And I drew them repeatedly, so often that the pages in that book were dirty. And drawing birds led me into curiosity about where are these birds from and what do they do? And then I learned about Central America and Africa and these exotic places and these exotic birds. And it's so funny, as I'm talking, I can visualize these friends of mine, right? And run the tape. And we didn't go to parks. So when graduated high school, I worked in Central America for 3 summers on medical stuff. And after my 3rd summer, I thought, I want to go work in parks. And I started working as a volunteer with national parks, and run the tape up to 1985, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was wearing my Ranger uniform. We took a break and we were right by the Smithsonian Museum. So I ran across the street because I wanted to see the Museum of Natural History. And as I ran or sort of walked into the exhibits, the first thing I came across were the glass cases with with the very birds that I'd drawn
Oh,
as a little kid. I stood there with my Ranger uniform crying.
wow.
And I was like, hey guys, I have studied you. And there they were. So,
That is a lovely story. I could just imagine that. And it's like having that moment and seeing them, and it's like, I've arrived, kind of like from where you started and said like first language or Spanish is your first language, and being a kid and going from learning about this in books to seeing it in person, the exact ones. I mean, what a full circle moment of all the things that had to happen for you to be there in that moment.
yep, it's just like a dream. It was dreamlike and realizing a dream really in a way that I never imagined. So yeah,
Oh, I
that's
love that.
To have like a meaningful career take you there too. It's so special when you can have that interplay of, passion and, you know,
so
childhood memory, have your job help get you there and close that circle. It's so
so
special and so rare.
so my wife and I started dating when we were freshmen in high school. And we wrote each other notes, and all that sort of stuff. And we split up for a few years at the latter part of our senior year of high school, and then got back together a few years later. And we both kept all of the things that we sent each other. And in my wife's box of stuff, there's a little note where I'd done a self portrait, and all it says is, "Wouldn't it be amazing if you got to be the businesswoman you want to be, and I got to work in nature?"
Oh my gosh. I am just like, overwhelmed with emotion. This is what
Now,
a lovely.
I think it's so important that we talk about the things that we want. That, I tell people all the time, nobody's going to know what you're thinking or what you want unless you say it out loud, and not that that's been my intentional practice, but it's been my nature, and in fact, my boss, Wade Crowfoot, one time said, "Mondo," he goes, "I see these things happen with you." And he goes, how does that happen? And we were on a hike at Dos Rios, which is the newest state park. And I was with Wade Crowfoot and Obi Kaufman, a wonderful artist and writer. And Wade asked me that, and it was sort of cold, and I was standing there, it was cold. And he asked me that, and I thought about it for a second, and I went, if you walk through the world you can walk through the world like this, or you can walk through the world like this. And I said, and you catch more stuff,
Yes.
you know? And
What
so,
a, yeah, that's a
anyway,
fantastic approach to life. And I think too, I'm a big believer of speaking things into existence.
yeah.
And I think the more you talk about it too, and I think that, approaching the world with open arms is such a great like approach to life, because when you put it out there, so many people actually want to help you. Like, I
And
feel like once you start
also,
to say it, people are like, oh, this is what this person wants. How can I help them?
yeah. And I think in all of us, doing that sort of thing cultivates empathy, cultivates understanding, subconsciously, it just, yeah.
Well, and it's no coincidence, right? Like open arms, having that motion, like that's also power pose. And it,
Oh,
has been proven to, improve results, whether it's you're doing it
uh,
before you go into a meeting, you're doing it before you're going to surgery, whatever it is, like it gives you that, little something extra to get you through and give you, the confidence from, whether a one-off tough experience or walking through life.
yeah. No, it's like, and actually, it's funny you say power pose. I'd never heard that phrase, but I think of it as, and the image that I had in mind when Wade asked me that question and I answered was a condor, this 10-foot wingspan, it was great. And, and I so love questions. It is, yeah, I love questions. And I also, I'll probably say something else about this, but I do think that one of the most powerful things that we bring to anything is embracing the not knowing part of ourselves,
Mm.
because it puts us in a position of asking questions to understand, you know. And I think that's actually been uh, an I want to say inadvertent part of my nature has been always go, I don't know anything here. So what about this? What about this? And then being able to process it so that you can actually communicate it accurately.
Yes, curiosity. I
Yeah.
love it. And one of the questions too I wanted to ask you is, sharing that lovely experience. Thank you so much from an early age and going to parks. So, what drew you to parks and recreation specifically rather than another environmental field like biology, maybe?
Um, I mean, I think our lives are iterative, and when I said I wanted to work for parks, I actually looked up parks in the phone book, national parks in the phone book, and I went to San Francisco to their regional headquarters, and walked in and said, "Hey, I want to be a forest ranger," and they said, "Well, you're in a wrong place. We don't hire forest rangers. We hire park rangers. You should go do your homework before you come ask for a job." So I went back home, looked in the phone book again, and I grew up in Martinez, California. And a mile from my house was the John Muir National Historic Site, a national park site, and I didn't realize that. So I literally drove down the hill, walked into that office and said, "Hey, I want to be a park ranger." And we were off and running. And to have my first work experience at the John Muir home was profound, for many reasons. I grew up in that town. When I was a little kid, my dad was a milkman, and I would go out on his routes with him sometimes. And it turned out that there were two people that worked at the Muir home who were connected to John Muir. One of them was a woman named Peg Plummer. Her grandfather was one of Muir's best friends. And then there was another lady named Sherry Hanna. She was married to John Muir's grandson. And I knew both of them. One is a librarian and one is a teacher, And so this real, these heritage names were people I knew, which made the access seem natural, right? And that whole experience just immersed me in this whole world. And in fact, one time there was an elderly man with a young female assistant who came to the John Muir home for a tour, and we were walking through the house, and he um, he I went into this room and I said, when John Muir was here, and I started to describe it, he said, "Well, that's not exactly what it was like." He said, "This is what this room was when I visited John Muir." And I was like, "Who are you?" He was the first deputy director of the National Park Service. And he was a law student at UC Berkeley, and his Horace Albright is his name. So I got to meet, here I am, this kid still. And also it was almost like, and I this is the image that came to mind. It's like these doors popped open, and each one is like a whole path. And that's how it started. And so that's what drew me into parks as a profession.
Yeah, that's so I love this. And I love hearing that the connection too through that. It's feeling connected to the space that you're in through not only growing up in that area, but John Muir is a real person, real people that knew him. And I think of John Muir as this like kind of this abstract name, like, oh, the father of the national park system, and obviously a legend. But to hear these personal connections that you have is I
Well,
just it's so I just love this.
so one of these folks that I mentioned had inherited a lot of his belongings, and I took care of her home while she was traveling in Scotland 3 different times. And so for 6 weeks of my life, um, I got to sleep in John Muir's bed.
Yeah.
you know, and the thing that I think about for colleagues now and in the jobs that I've had is if you look around, these heritage names, these heritage people are all around us still, the descendants of, or the very people themselves, and they're accessible, and yeah, so history is a living thing.
And you are part of that. You will be saying Armando Quintero, like this was his office. This is where I worked. And I think anyway, I think what you're doing now, the work you're doing and the experience you have, I'm sure, and I want to learn more about this, of course, is like really impactful for what you're doing today and the experience that you want to bring to the new visitors to parks who were in your shoes once. And something, one of the things we wanted to ask you is you've led at the federal level with National Parks Service. You've been in higher education at UC Merced, and now you're at the state level with California State Parks. So three very different institutions as far as federal, state, academic. And how has your, leadership philosophy evolved based on your experience with these different institutions?
Um, what's interesting is that they're all institutions of learning and science, you know. Um, and there's teachers all around us. And they're, I'll say they're all teachers, and some of them are really brutal experiences where, for me, it was a guide of, I will never do that to anyone, So there's a lot of folks. I mean, there's folks to thank. I shouldn't say a lot of folks. There are certainly gratitude on my part for going like, whoa, I'm not going to do that. But also watching the nature of what it all those things I think demand creativity, education, communication, and the clarity of communication. And as I said earlier, being able to say something in a way that people can understand it. It's not abstract. And apply it to whatever their decision making is, or just their own interests. They're really giving tools to people, and really, I mean, I have a couple years ago, I actually reached back to bosses that I've had over the years to thank them.
I'm sure that meant a lot to them.
And because it's not me, it's like we're shaped by the people around us. We're shaped by our experiences. We're shaped by our grief, profoundly by our grief. And I really value grief in that it puts us in a position of having empathy and understand. Grief creates understanding, I think. And then we can, you know, really get to work.
Mhm.
And I mean, certainly the last in the time that I've been in this job for the last 5 years, we've had some terrible things happen. I mean, Big Basin burned to the ground. My first day on the job, I was there with the governor and the secretary, and Big Basin had the oldest state park had completely burned to the ground. And the the governor, as we were finishing a tour, and I've told folks this story before, but it was definitely seminal. We're at the headquarters. Everything is black and shades of gray and burnt brown. And the governor, in front of about 40 people, the media and staffers and stuff like that, introduced me. And he said, "Hey, this is Armando. He's the new director of state parks. He was sworn in 5 hours ago." And then he said, in the middle of this disaster, "What is your vision for the California state park system?" And I basically said, look, we've been gathering traditions since 1864 when Yosemite was set aside as a state protected land. And in all that time, every time we've acquired these state, local, federal lands, we've been building on traditions. Look around. These traditions did not serve us. We got it wrong. So we have to apply the best science possible. We have to engage genius from wherever we can find it. And we really had to think about true sustainability. How do we manage all of this together? And this is certainly for all parks. And then it was the height of COVID. It was September 2020. And I said, and look where everybody went during COVID. They went to our public spaces. And look what we did with this. Not only do we need to take care of these places for our own societal well-being, physical and mental health, but we need more of them, and we need to take really good care of them. That was it.
Well, and
That
it's
is.
such a encapsulation also because there are, maybe sometimes conflicting mission visions with, something like a park, access versus
Yeah,
preservation and telling history versus learning from history and how, especially how do you tell difficult parts of our history while still celebrating it?
right.
And it's, it is such, it's so important and so hard to strike that balance in those competing, things that we need to do.
Right. And I mean, this brings up the issue of equity, right? And the way that I think about that, it's equity and belonging. How do you get people to know that this is theirs? This is where you belong. This is, and what I like to say is that this is where you live. And I've said to employees in state parks and in public settings, no matter where you are in California, this is where you live. This is a part of your world. And I want, if there's a goal for me, it's I want people in California to be able to think about North Coast redwoods and beaches and the mountains and the deserts and all these places and go, yeah, yeah, this is home. This is where I live. And
I
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, it's fine. I would say I grew up in Missouri, but I've lived in California for 20 years and I love it. Like I almost every day I pitch myself and I'm like, I can't believe I live here. And just last week I was on a conference call and with some people I hadn't met. And I was like, oh, I'm in San Diego. It's like, it's so nice out. It's so beautiful. They're like, oh, are you visiting? It's like, no, I live here. But the way I was talking about it, they thought I was a visitor. I was like, every day that's a beautiful day here, I love. And when it's raining, I'm like, we need the rain.
Yeah.
And it's such a special place. And I'm so grateful for people like you and the institutions that the state has established to protect California and keep it, work to keep it this special place and accessible too to those who want to visit.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, and the diversity of the people who visit, um, it's more than we realize. And I know we had talked about this, but one of the things that I did when I got into this role is I reshaped our recruitment team. And at state parks now, we have basically a headhunting team at headquarters. And and they will work with applicants to help them do their application to make sure that the job that they're applying for is a job they're qualified for. I mean, how many times have we applied for jobs? It's like, whoops, you didn't make the cut and you didn't know why. And there's no reason to keep that a secret. It's public information. And actually, today at the Natural Resources Agency headquarters in Sacramento, where the state parks are headquartered, there is a small building that was going to be a restaurant. And today it is a recruitment center for all of the resource agency departments. You can walk
Wow.
in there, and there's teams that'll help you write your resume, match you with the jobs you're qualified for, help you apply. And it's what we need to do. It's what we need to do. And I have to say that the level of excitement, well, actually, I'll mention this, when all the federal employees were being let go, especially the land management employees were being let go, we sent a letter to our national parks colleagues and said, hey, if you've been displaced or looking for employment, we're hiring. And we ended up putting together the resources agency, of which state parks is a part, put together a job fair and on the first floor of the big building that we're in. And I went down there in the middle of the day to see how it was going. I got really emotional. There were 400 people there with their resumes in their hand and their hope on their face.
Like you're all hired. Let's
I
go.
know. I mean, I just like,
That'd be
and the
so
way that I
hard.
referred to have, I was asked in a hearing, I was asked by a senator, are you literally, I was asked, are you poaching? And I said, no, we're keeping great talent in California. And that is what we need. So, and talent, diversity go together, right? All that. I talked about communication, and it makes a difference to have folks who are culturally competent for a range of cultures to enhance communication and connection. And really, the people of California are the constituents of these places. And cultivating understanding there means cultivating better protection and better providing.
Yes, I'm thinking about the resources agency. The resource agency is thinking about the what you were sharing earlier is young Armando looking up in the phone book, not sure where to go, where to start, other than this is what I want to do, and to have that resource available now for future generations and next generations of park employees is, you know, like look how far the state parks has come, and that is has to be very very humbling and exciting, and hopefully a source of pride of like what you guys have been able to do and to reach those individuals.
It's funny, I'll meet new employees or even existing employees, and meeting the director, and it's like, no, like it's like I am you and you are me. It's like I, I am that kid that you are right now. And yeah. So
But that's a unique and special trait of a
mm,
strong leader and a leader that people want to work for.
mm,
Is you come in, and we all know that
yeah.
some other people, lead with their ego. And I think being approachable and accessible to the people that work with you and want to work with you is just a testament to your leadership and how you approach life.
It's funny when you said ego just now. I told you I'm very visual. The image I got were glasses that were actually a mirror that just looked back at my own eyes. You know,
What a metaphor.
Yeah, ego can be blinding. Honestly, you don't realize what you're doing. But anyway, and I get reminded all the time. I have two adult daughters. They have shaped me profoundly. In fact, I credit them. I credit them and the questions that they've asked me over the years, as to how part of my trajectory to where I am now is absolutely my kids looking at what I'm doing and saying, "Dad, you know,
Oh,
that's a whole set of stories." But there's very real
yeah.
connections and trajectories and I tell people all the time, you better be listening to the kids in your world because they're sort of unobstructed perspective is so clear that it's provides a brilliant grasp of the obvious.
Mm.
Well, definitely sending this episode to my dad to listen to so that he maybe has a little bit more of an appreciation for my unobstructed opinions that I throw his way.
I'll tell you, I took my fourth grade daughter's class on a field trip, and I've told this story to many folks, but it's absolutely true. Took them on a field trip to Mount Tamalpais to teach some basic botany, and there's reservoirs up there and beautiful streams and creeks. And the kids were like, "Wow, what's this water?" And I said, "This is your drinking water." And weeks later, my fourth grade daughter screamed for me in the house, and I found her in the bathroom and she's looking at the toilet with her hands like this. And I go, "What's going on?" And she goes, "We are not flushing our toilets with that beautiful water." And she pointed in the direction of Mount Tam. And I apologized to her and I said, "I'm so sorry." And I went to hug her. She said, "Don't touch me. That's disgusting." And I said, "I'm afraid you guys are going to have to figure out some problems that we've created." And then a few years later, a seat opened up on the local water board. And that kid came in saying, "I thought you said you couldn't do anything." And I ran for the water board because of her and I won.
Whoa. Go daughter, and also go you parenting to raise a daughter that feels, you know what, empowered to challenge you and
Yeah.
responding to her. And she obviously, she's holding you accountable. And
Yeah, well, no, really, it really just amazing. And both kids, their observations, really, it's funny, my older daughter, also when she was younger, one time curiosity, she said, "What distinguishes your best friends from your friends?" And I thought, God, that's a great question. And I said, "Oh my goodness." She was in college actually. And I said, wow, I said, "My best friends are people who I would trust with their decision making if suddenly my life was in their hands." And my daughter said, "Oh," and she said a girl's name. And she goes, "I shouldn't be friends with her." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Dad, if I was out hanging out with folks, I don't know that she would watch out for me." And you see what I'm saying. I mean, so
very
those lessons are
introspective. Yeah.
back and forth. But yeah, no, I tell people all the time, listen to the kids around you, listen to the kids you're working with. It is the future you're looking at, and you're being talked to by the future. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think to segue into AEP, I mean, a lot of this reason for the podcast is, to share stories like yours and leaders in the environmental field. And it is to outreach to emerging professionals,
Mm.
students, people who are earlier in their careers, want to pivot. And AEP does a lot with mentorship. I mean, it's such a huge part of it, and student outreach
Mhm.
and student membership, and creating spaces to hear the voices for the next generation of environmental professionals and
Oh,
learning and listening from them on how can we do better, right?
yeah. Yes.
Um, and so, kind of pivoting a little bit, but something I did want to ask you is our episode before this, we spoke with Kinley Washlawer
Yeah.
at Parks, California. And of course, she said very kind things about you and was excited when we told her we were speaking with you next. And so, can you tell us more about California State Parks and how you collaborate with Parks California and the
Sure.
importance of the partnership?
A little bit of context, but yes, um, all park departments and agencies, state, local, federal, have park partners, these nonprofits that do work. And in state parks, we have numerous nonprofits, some that operate at the local level at a specific park, some that work with a cluster of parks, and two that are statewide partners. One of them is the Parks Foundation that was established in the mid 60s. But Parks California is sort of a new organization, a new creature. They're 7 years old, and they were actually established by statute. So the legislature basically wrote a law creating Parks California. And what their status does is it allows us to collaborate with them as a quasi-governmental organization. So we meet with them regularly. We do our strategic planning together. Again, we're only in a 7-year-old relationship, which I would say is like a 7-year-old relationship. And so we're early on learning a lot, and we've been able to accomplish things that have been really unexpected and wonderful. I mentioned Big Basin burning to the ground. Big Basin had just this huge constituency and following that just loved that park. And when we looked at it post fire, we thought we cannot build it back the way it was because, for example, mature giant sequoias, mature coast redwoods are referred to as monarch trees. And there were only like 4 or 5 monarch coast redwoods within Big Basin that died during that fire. All the other monarch trees came right back. They're adapted to fire. So even though they came out of the fire looking like 300-foot blackened chopsticks with no branches, they've sprouted new branches since, and they know how to shut everything down and then come back after a fire, strongly resilient. The only monarch trees that died at Big Basin died because we had buildings at the base of their feet.
Oh,
Whoops.
yeah.
So we're not doing that anymore. So what happened is Parks California partnered with us and led what we called Reimagining Big Basin through a series of public meetings. And what we were able to do was engage with the public with the full partnership of Parks California and come up with the long-term vision for Big Basin, which is already being executed. And the public has fully embraced what we're doing as we adapt to this extreme climate world in which which you're living in. So we're not going to be putting back the historic buildings and the historic places. We're creating a new footprint for the future. And in a huge way, it was Parks California that allowed us to do this new effort. Um, and so there's a number of areas where we collaborate. They are working with us with arts programming and employee development and working to get routes to parks, getting communities to get out to parks where they can't. And we just do a lot of creative work with with Parks California, and we do that also with the other nonprofits, but in different ways. With
Mhm.
Parks California, uh, I guess sort of my sole excitement about that is being able to really think statewide and an impactful uh, effort statewide and how we engage the public and connect the public with these incredible places. They're great partners.
Yeah, great. I think too it's so interesting, the first whatever 5 minutes of this and learning about this and where you're at today and increasing access, right? When you were a mile away from a national park and didn't have awareness and now, you are part of an effort and a lot of people obviously and partners to support that, but to increase the access and make it so that
Yeah.
doesn't happen to someone
Yeah, I
else in the
might
future.
mention something here that's sort of fun, and that is right after I got on board, this was the governor's goal. One of the governor's goals and the secretary's goals was for us to work on creating better access. And we have park passes, right? And so we thought about that. And I live in Marin County, and I had heard about a program here. In fact, one of my friends was the person that started it, which was the county park or the parks in Marin County worked with the county library so that you could take your library card uh, to the library and check out a pass for parks in Marin County. We created something called, let me see if you can see this. This is
Yeah.
called the California Parks Library Pass. We got 33,000 of these distributed to libraries across California. So anybody, half the population of California has a library card. And so you can check these out. This is actually the most checked out item in California's libraries. And when I meet librarians and I say, "Oh, do you know about the library pass?" They literally get emotional. And one of the things that's happened working with a state librarian um, is that we know that people are going to libraries, getting these park passes, checking out books about parks. And we also know because there's a QR code on the back where people can self-identify and fill out a questionnaire. And uh, and it turns out that 60% of the users have an income of less than 60K a year. And there were all kinds of things that prevented folks from going to parks. And so we have two other passes, one called the fourth grade adventure pass. So fourth graders can go online and get a free pass for them and their family. We have a number of parks that are specified that have developed curriculum for those fourth graders. So the fourth graders fourth graders are the perfect age to lead their family on field trips to parks. I would have done it if I'd known about it, that was important. And then the other thing that I'm absolutely thrilled about is um, people in California who are recipients of Department of Social Services support, so low-income families. And um, our teams worked with that office, and it used to be that you had to do this complicated application process to get a free pass to parks. Well, now it is actually one of the services that they get. And today, there's 133,000 people who have passes because they are receiving state assistance for food and things like that, and parks.
Wow.
And so the work, it has just been, I don't even know what to say. It's just like, um, okay, here's another visual. There's something called seed banks, in all the ecosystems, there's these, and seeds will lay dormant for centuries. And then when the right conditions come, they pop up. And I feel like at state parks, I hadn't thought about this until just now, that a lot of the work that we've done in state parks in the last few years has been like the propagation of a dormant seed bank of access and connection. It's just mind blowing to me. And it's a lot of people doing it. It's not me. It's like you release the genius and let's see how that goes and how do we work together to make it better. It's going to be iterative. We're going to start and then realize that that doesn't work. So how do we tweak it? And it's just been, and it's back and forth. It's not just the delivery of program, but the delivery and the exchange of information. Anyway, it's just making me so happy.
It should. It's
Oh, yeah.
life-changing, literally,
Yeah.
for so many people. I mean, what an impact.
Yeah.
And Corinne, I know.
No, it's just I'm thinking about as you're speaking, like my husband's a public school teacher, and a lot of what he'll say is that being a public school teacher, you're kind of asked to do everything, like outside of teaching. And I think librarians are the same. I think what you've talked about, Armando, is parks are asked to do the same too,
Mhm.
and it's multidisciplinary ideas and solutions to really really big problems. And
Mhm.
it is so inspiring to listen to you kind of take that, embrace it and bring in the whole host of experts about how so many problems to solve in order to get access and have, the park system implement, its ideas. And it's just really, really impressive and inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. Just crazy. Um, yeah.
And
So
so,
go ahead.
yeah, it's, yeah, I mean, it says such an impact clearly and in the numbers, right? I mean, you set up these programs and, you think they'll be successful and I think it's a very creative partnership too, thinking about the libraries and the seed banks and bringing people to the table that are thinking creatively of like, how do we solve this big problem, and state assistance and having those solutions in place, and they're successful. And I think, what a gift again to people who live here and people who might not otherwise be able to access the parks.
Yes. No,
Just-
I'm just amazed.
Yeah.
Um,
And pivoting a little bit from that is, so Association of Environmental Professionals, AEP. So within AEP, we have planners, biologists, Sequoia practitioners, and they often work on projects that border state parklands. And so what's something that you wish or want these professionals, or something that you hope they better understand about state parks' role and priorities?
Context here too. When I did what my daughter said, which is get on the water board, I was looking at Mount Tamalpais, and Mount Tamalpais is in the middle of Marin County. It's managed by 4 different agencies: county parks, a section; state parks, a section; national parks, a section; and a big chunk by a water utility. And I'm on the board of this water utility, and I had worked with those other agencies, national, state, and federal, or national, federal, and local parks in different capacities, not as an employee, but for national parks. And I said to the board, we really should create a nonprofit partner, just like those guys have, to help us accomplish our work on the watershed. Well, that turned into a conversation with the other 3 state, local, and federal managers. And there was a small group that got together, of which I was a part, and it took us a couple years, and we put together a collaborative approach to managing the whole mountain. And in 2014, we started that in 2012. In 2014, we signed a joint powers authority between the water utility, county parks, state parks, and national parks. And what this joint powers authority does is it is a framework by which those 4 groups can work as partners in managing the whole mountain. It has been so wildly successful. And a core partner in that is a group called Landscape Scale Stewardship Collaborative. And they're friends of mine that have worked on that. And and so what happened is in 2014, think about this, and this goes to your question about how do you take all these different groups and get them working together cross boundary. And so what's happened is in 2014, once we had the JPA put together and the managers of all those four groups were collaborating, when they started writing for grants, for all four of them applying for a pot of money, where just a year before it would have been four different applications for the same mountain, they started getting money, like millions of dollars. So since 2014 to present, the management of Has Mountain has changed completely. And you literally have interagency collaboration at the core level. And just the last few days, and there was a 3-day conference in Sacramento of nonprofits that work, conservancies, land conservancies from across California came together. And there was a presentation done by our chief scientist, Jay Chamberlain, along with one of the lead collaborative people working with the landscape scale stewardship collaborators. Her name is Sharon Farrell. And what they presented at this conference is that today there are now 40 landscape scale collaboratives, which cover over 70% of California's landscape.
Whoa.
60% of these collaboratives include state parks.
I actually learned last weekend.
I
I
mean, that's my answer to your question. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this is that, I'm sorry, Corinne, but this is what we have to do. We have to partner with all the other folks that are doing the same work. And as a collective, take the best ideas. I will not say that we have the bank on ideas. It's like, anyway, go ahead, Corinne. I'm sorry.
no, I learned, as an environmental professional, consider myself to be like fairly aware to stuff like this. But I went for a hike with my husband in the Tijuana estuary
Oh
last
yeah.
weekend and walk up, and sure enough, there's a state parks truck there. And this is somewhere where I go frequently. Had no idea that it is a collaboration between state parks, NOAA, think Fish and Wildlife Service, and then NGO partners as well. And it works perfectly and seamlessly to a member of the public, even quasi aware member of the public, that it was such a learning moment for me to like go home, Google it, and do my research and learn that all of this collaboration is happening, oftentimes behind the scenes with unsung heroes, in a way that has created just an absolutely lovely space, in the middle of South County, San Diego.
Another good example, that's a great example. Another good example is the Giant Sequoia Lands Coalition. So all of the giant sequoias in California are operated by different entities: national parks, state parks, county parks. There are others, tribes. And a few years ago, all of those folks came together. And so now we work with each other. And so when we did a control, but we're working on a prescription fire at Calaveras Big Trees, we had CAL FIRE, state parks, tribes, the local fire department, Sequoia National Park, everybody working together and applying the knowledge that they all bring from their respective landscapes and conditions. I mean, it's just like, of and it's funny because it's like, of course you would want to do that. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question.
No, I love it. I think it's important to know and to understand the scale in California at which these partnerships are happening. And also a good reminder to think about that, consider that. And I think when we're talking about the environmental profession, especially for those who aren't as familiar with the partnerships that can be available, to be thinking about that. Who can we bring in? And I know a lot of people do that, but a good reminder and encourager to continue to do it or start doing it if you haven't. And I think that's something that is so special about AEP is there's all these different chapters across the state, and then we have an annual conference, and you get all these people in a room, and they're sharing, and of they're competing too, they're competitors, but they have such a passion for the environment and the work they're doing, and really collectively a common goal, and it's such a collaborative atmosphere, and I think to bring that idea of collaboration instead of competition is how we can get things done. And so to hear the 70% across the state is yeah, that's a remarkable statistic. Okay,
Yeah.
we have a few.
It's encouraging,
It
right?
is, yes. Yes, we only have a few minutes left, and I
Yeah.
have so much I wanna ask you. So
You choose.
oh, I know, I'm torn, I'm like, "Where do I go?" So I do think one thing, and you've shared so much wisdom with us already, and what advice, though, would you give to emerging professionals or emerging environmental professional who wants to have this kind of, like, broad, like, multi-sector impact or really any kinda impact, frankly, in the, environmental field?
Curiosity, absolutely curiosity, passion. I often talk to folks at state parks and just say, if you're not sitting here being, bringing emotion to what you're doing, you need to wake that up. And for me, it is everything that I've done has been driven by curiosity and even polar opposite, sort of things. It wasn't always one topic area. Um, yeah. Um, a long time ago, I had a colleague, one of my first colleagues used to say, specialization, that's for insects, you know, um, and I think strengths and core areas are really important. One of the things that I have a strength in is water in California. Not only did I serve on the local water board, but I chaired the California Water Commission for 5 years. And I will say that I think the most important environmental problem in California is water, and it's the understanding of water, and that is something that we're gonna be working on at state parks.
So
And
maybe
so yeah, go ahead, Corinne.
just tearing off that, Armando, water can be one of those problems in California that feels insurmountable. So, given that it's something Parks is focusing on, something you're taking on, what's a message of hope that we
The
can leave our
message of
listeners
hope
with?
is getting all of us in California to understand that we don't understand water. For example, I mean, I'll just give you like there's a thing that I did a while ago called 10 questions that you should know, but I'll only give you three. How much water do you get for a dollar when you pay your water bill? What percentage of your water bill is actually for electricity to get that to your home? Where does your water come from? And if we had a hard drought start today, how long would your water supply last? Those are real questions. And there's a bunch of others. I can talk to you about the water stuff because I'm really excited about that as a core. It's like it should be basic. Everybody can tell you what the price of gas is right now, but not water. And how's this?
Very true.
Water in LA is cheaper than water in the Bay Area and water in Northern California or even Seattle.
Hmm.
And I can tell you about that later.
Yeah. Well, one of the final questions I had for you is, and this might be what you're speaking about, is there a project or initiative you're working on that you're excited about? I don't know if that's water, like the water challenges, or if there's another thing that comes to mind.
Well, I think talking about the landscape stuff, water, it's actually communication. And so something that encompasses all of it is that I'm really excited and proud about is that our communications team has redesigned park brochures. The park brochures that we're gonna start putting out in parks over the next coming years, actually are a contemporary experience of what you're experiencing with historical context that you can dive into through QR codes or something like that. But it's really talking about here's what this place is, here are the issues that we're dealing with here, and we're making brochures that we can turn around and reflect current conditions. So right now, the brochures that you get may have information that's 20, 30 years old. The new brochures that we're doing, should there be a fire or disaster, we can print a whole new current version that tells you, here's how you can get involved, here's who's helping, here's what the plan is, here's how you can get involved in planning as the public. So we're changing the way we communicate about parks.
That's exciting.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you. I'm going to get into the wrap up rapid five. I just want to thank you for being so generous with your time and sharing your knowledge and experience. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I don't want it to end, but alas,
Yeah,
the
here we
day
are.
must go on. So, what is your favorite daily habit?
Uh, playing guitar, gardening, or doing artwork.
And three things you'd bring to a deserted island.
A guitar with permanent strings, probably a multi-tool like a Leatherman, and a large empty book that I could write and draw in.
I was thinking when you said your daily habits, I was like, oh, I feel like this might translate to the deserted island supplies.
Yeah.
What's your favorite environmental policy?
Sigma. Sigma stands for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which was passed in 2014. And it's going to require that we consciously manage groundwater systems in California by 2040. We have to do it. It is fundamental to the world of California. So there's that.
Yes. Favorite flora or fauna?
I keep bees. Bees are master teachers. Do it, and you will never stop being educated by the bees.
And finish this sentence. Wouldn't it be cool if?
Wouldn't it be cool if all of us in California cultivated our own gardens to reflect the native plants of the region where we live? We would have such, I mean, we could turn the whole state into a park if we did that. And I speak my practice. My front yard is 100% native plants that I've cultivated over 30 years. And I live in a small chunk of land. I mean, it's basically a neighborhood, but there are 5 oak trees that the blue jays have planted in places at work. And I even have an oak tree that is 30 years old that started out as a seedling when we first bought our house. It's 40 feet high. It's gorgeous. And the other oak tree, there's another oak tree that I'm letting grow to a pretty good size, but there's 3 oak trees that I'm making them bonsai oak trees that are like one of them's 4 feet high and the other 2 are maybe 3 feet high in my yard. Like this mini natural landscape.
It's your art and the nature, I feel like, coming together with the bonsai oak trees. That's so unique. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Well, thanks
And maybe
again. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Corinne. Sorry.
sorry, I was just gonna ask one bonus
Mhm.
question since
Yeah.
we do have
Ooh.
kind of statewide, just incredible weather this weekend. Any special plans? Do you know what park you're gonna hit? Do you know what you're doing yet?
I'm remodeling our chicken coop. Saturday, I'm remodeling the chicken coop, and then Sunday, I'll be working in our garden. Yeah.
What about you, Corinne?
I am I think we're going for a hike in Los Penasquitas. So it's supposed to have seasonal winter waterfalls. So got that on our radar.
Fun. I'm going to Bird Park in San Diego for a barbecue. So we're both in San Diego.
I will be hiking, taking my dog into the open space adjacent to our house, which has an overview of Mount Tamalpais and Angel Island, 2 state parks.
Lovely. Well, I hope you have a fantastic
I
weekend,
will.
both of you. And yeah, thank you again. We really appreciate your time, and this has been such a lovely conversation.
Thank you for what you all do. So critical. Really a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to be updated when new episodes are released and leave us a review to let us know what you think. It also really helps us to share the podcast with others who may enjoy learning about the environmental industry. If you want to submit a shout out or any feedback, please send an email or voice memo to podcast@califaep.org. The email again is podcast with an S, podcast at CALIFAEP.org.